I'm Catherine Elizabeth Abbey, and I'm a targeted individual.
My name is Jill Jensen, and I'm a targeted individual.
My name is Jarrell Powell, and I am a targeted individual. I called the police originally because it was the electronic harassment had reached a volume and a volume level that was too disturbing for me to even work remotely. And then in around November of 2022, I began to just start feeling zaps in my head. It just felt like a straight up directed energy zap.
I grew up in a very rural area. So we knew all of our local police officers. We knew our state troopers that lived in the area. And my dad worked closely with them for several years. So I grew up trusting completely the police force and state troopers and everyone who did that kind of work. When I was first targeted, of course, I called them first. That just made sense. I was a good citizen. I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I was seeing criminal activity. So, of course, I would call them.
And that's when I felt like there was something very serious about just the situation. And also, I began hearing it at my parents, visiting their houses. So, I was concerned for my parents' sake.
I've had a variety of experiences with the police. The first interaction with police that I had was back in 2014. I was helping people who were being targeted. I wasn't being gang stalked quite yet. That didn't start till 2015. I didn't realize what was going on with the technology in relation to me at the time, so I didn't really have that to report, but I was writing emails to a man I knew from the martial arts who was a former police chief of 2 cities and NCIS investigator. And I was hoping that he might be able to listen to the situation and help with some of the investigations and the targeting of people that I knew at the time. Unfortunately, what happened was it seems that he had found some kind of information on me and misunderstood it. It sounds like some defamation was going around. We were also sharing in some personal correspondence with one another. He became triggered in some way and ended up turning against me and putting forward defamatory comments about me. And when I later exposed the defamation, he ended up being removed from his position. He was the head advisor to a martial arts Grandmaster Council. That happened in 2017 when the defamation of a website that was published by him and some other martial artists was revealed. So that was my early experience with police.
So they would come out. I lived in the country alone, and they would come out and look around and they wouldn't see anything. And then they would come up and knock on my door and say, "We don't see anything." So a couple of times later, I had installed a camera. So I showed one of the deputies the video of the people assembling out in the pasture. There were 4 vehicles always, and 2 people in each vehicle with flashlights. And then the plane would land soon after that. So I showed him the video of him arriving to my land and driving up to my house and all of those vehicles hiding. And then when he drove out again, all of those vehicles came back out and kept doing what they were doing. But even that wasn't enough to persuade them that there was something going on out there. So the last time I asked for their help, they actually said to me, the next time you see a plane landing out in that field, go outside and film it with your phone. And because the plane landed in the dark at either 9:00 p.m. or 3 a.m., and I lived alone in the country, there was no way I was going outside where all the people were to film them doing criminal things. So that was the end of my help from the local police.
In 2015, I was spending time with a man who had a lot of experience in relation to targeting, and he was giving me some guidance. He was sharing with me stories of police corruption and his experiences and telling me things to look out for. And then fast forward to 2021, I became aware of the people targeting me, calling police and making false reports about me. So I remember this one situation in 2021 when I was under threat of my life. They were threatening to kill me. And I remember going to this Lowe's location. I wanted to make sure I was around people. I wanted to make sure that I was on camera. So I went into a monitored location so that if anything happened, it would be witnessed. Well, the group that has been targeting me since November 2018 and is currently on me, they made a false report to police to get the police to come out and remove me from Lowe's so that I no longer had any kind of witnesses to the stalking that they were doing.
I did call the state troopers to ask them for help. They have a special, I don't know what you call it, I guess a special unit called Wing in Nebraska, and they deal a lot in drugs, so they can enforce that. But when I talked to the State Patrol, they said, you have to submit a formal complaint against your local police in order for us to help you. So I said, no, I wasn't going to do that. Our local police maybe weren't equipped to deal with what was happening out in that field, but I knew them. I wasn't going to complain about them formally. Years later, I met another state trooper and I told him this story, and he looked shocked by it. And he said, that is not a thing. You absolutely do not have to file a formal complaint against your local police to get help from us. So I don't know what happened there, but that was the extent of my help from the police.
Yeah, I went to the FBI field office and just gave them, like, showed them the websites and let them know this is happening. And again, they said that there was no nexus for an investigation. So like, it's something I don't think they really are just going to like visit your house and, ask you to provide them more evidence. I don't know how far they go with their investigative process.
Yes, I contacted the FBI 3 times in 2023, and I also contacted them this year, just in this past month or so. In 2023, I had reported torture that I was experiencing, and the moment I mentioned that, the tone of the person taking the report immediately shifted, and I could tell that it became unfavorable for me, as though the person was going to pass me off. And sure enough, I was told, go report to local law enforcement. and local medical personnel. Well, I was in an area where I didn't know very much about the local law enforcement at the time. Pardon me. And I had also experienced that false harassment report. So I didn't feel comfortable making the report to that local law enforcement. But when I was in Monticello and going to church with the local sheriff, I thought, now's the time to make the reports that the FBI told me to make. And when I made those reports, as I stated before, they ended up doing an illegal judicial maneuver to have me put into a mental health facility. They failed to take the reports seriously, and they were indeed legitimate reports. They continue to be legitimate to this day, and I continue to seek effective, competent, and integrity-filled investigation into the matters involved. In addition to the FBI, I had also contacted the Department of Army Criminal Investigation Division and the Office of Special Investigations as well. And I got pass-offs from both of them stating that it's outside their purview and to contact the FBI. This year, after experiencing criminal hacking of my phones as well as my Facebook live streams, I decided to contact the FBI again and see if they might investigate the criminal hacking and make no mention of the torture, just see if they'll take care of the hacking. And so I went through the process of talking with someone. I looked at the website that I need to report through. I went about drafting a report in part, and my current next step is to finish that draft and submit it through the website. I have concerns, though, because the group that is on me, they regularly hack my communications. They will hack my emails so that they do not get where they need to go. They hack my video live stream evidence. And so I need to have a verification process where if I make a report to the FBI, I want to make sure that it is actually received.
It's something that I haven't done yet, but I see it in the works since I do have, like, my websites posted there.
I have not done that yet either, and it is on my list of things that I need to do.
I started writing to the White House in 2023, January 2023. And I was writing to them at a time when the group that's currently on me was fraudulently role-playing a wide variety of public officials, including Joe Biden and his administration. They've also role-played Donald Trump and his administration. They've role-played military leaders and world leaders and Hollywood A-listers. This is a highly fraudulent group that does a lot of role-playing and scenario playing. And so there's a whole history of that. And I was writing to the White House at that time. I wrote to the Republican and Democratic parties of Florida, as well as the Republican and Democratic parties of California, notably back when Kevin McCarthy was the Speaker of the House. I wrote to Governor Gavin Newsom out in California, and I've also written to Governor Ron DeSantis here in Florida. I did receive a response from Ron DeSantis' office to one of my letters regarding death threats against me. He referred that letter to the Department of Children and Families, which links into a situation I had experienced back in 2015, where I can pull up official records that have narratives regarding that. So I've been in dialogue with an individual there through DCF. There still needs to be resolution of the defamation that was taking place at a time when I was being warned of potential assassination and that my children could be used against me. And so I'm hopeful to see where conversations might go with both the governor's office as well as DCF and getting both the defamation cleared as well as addressing issues of current death threats that I experienced from the targeting group that's on me.
To meet people in person who are going through the same thing that you are is seriously empowering. And then we spent three mornings and one afternoon protesting outside the two Air Force bases. One was Schriever and the other was Peterson. And so Peterson is where they make decisions about people like us. And Schriever is where the group is who carries out the orders. They carry out the orders. So because it's such a compartmentalized program and not everyone has the kind of classification access to the information, we wanted to educate not only people who lived in Colorado Springs, but the people who work at those bases, because they may not know that that's going on there. And we're hoping that someone will come forward and help us and be a witness for us. So it was the first time I've ever been to a protest. I've been very apolitical, I guess, most of my life. I always vote, but I'm not an activist in any sense. But it seems like that is one of the ways we can get people's attention about this and educate the public. So it was important to do, and I'm really glad I did it.
Using very specific language that they have rehearsed in their mind or gone through in a role play numerous times so they know it off the top of their head, that doesn't draw any suspicion to themselves or make them look so far out of the ordinary to the police that they have kind of metaphorically marked themselves to be a target or to be of ridicule or to be treated different. I know this will sound like a cop-out, but I would say no. And the reason being is, first, I'm going to say the majority of police have no idea what they're even referencing. They have no point of frame of reference. Number two, let's say it's a cop like me. I understand exactly what they're saying, but I don't have the tool diagnostic ability to determine where it's coming from and track it down like the FCC would, because of the energy and the frequencies which the FCC has federal authority over. TV stations, radio stations, microwave technology, etc., they have the authority over that. So that would be an FCC thing. And if I was who I am, I would contact the FCC. In other words, if they contacted me as the police, I would turn around and have to contact the FCC, and I would frame it this way. Everything has to do with framing and presentation, image projection. So if I contact the FCC, I'd say, I'm the chief of police here. We have a citizen that is receiving a huge amount of electromagnetic frequencies around them who is hurting them. And I need you to do a federal investigation to find out what is going on here, and ask for federal investigators with diagnostic equipment to come and assist us in our investigation. And that's how I would do it. But police probably aren't going to call them, even if they know it, because the police are afraid they'll be labeled as nuts. So remember, when people don't understand things, the first thing they do is criticize you. That's just life. Number two, if the claims you make sound fantastic or unbelievable in their minds, then there is a fight or flight response, and they fight you verbally, not physically, telling you, I don't know how this could be, and trying to get you to justify your victimhood. So that creates a real dilemma. But I'm going to say 99% of these agencies have no way to determine where it's coming from, what frequency level, what it's doing, if it's a crime. And when I say a crime, we know it's a crime against humanity, but for the individual, targeted individual, you have to show that somebody knew what they were doing and knew or reasonably knew or should have known that doing this would cause harm to another. And so to me, it is an assault, but it's electronic or frequency bullets, where you have a physical bullet if you shoot somebody. Well, they're being shot, but they're being shot with pulses of energy, for lack of a better correct vernacular, and so it's still an assault. And this is a serious, very serious assault akin to attempted murder. If I just do a little bit of role playing or scenario here, if I was a TI and let's say my home was broke into and things are missing or things are rearranged, then I have to play it cool and play it a little different than the atypical victim of a home invasion of sorts. If I call the police, I say my home was entered, and when I left, these following things were stolen. Or for some wacko reason, there must be a crazy person loose in the area because somebody, for unknown reasons, gained entry to my home and they've rearranged furniture or other things in this house, and only a madman would do something like that. But somebody's obsessed with me or stalking me, and this is their calling card, and I need a police report on this. And I need y'all to watch my home because somebody's, out of their mind to do this. No normal person would break into somebody's house and rearrange their belongings. So obviously somebody is a threat to me. Okay, that can be accepted. That makes sense. And if you appear very, very genuinely concerned that a madman or woman is gaining access, then they're going to check around the house and they're going to say, we don't find any entry points that somebody has forced entry. Well, sir or ma'am, let me tell you this. You can go on Google, you can go on YouTube, and you can find for $100 or less, you can get lockpick kits, you can get drill guns, and you can enter a house as though you had a key. That is a master key to every location in America. So you can run it and get in here. So, no, I suppose that they planned this out and was able to make entry without being traceable exactly. And I didn't know to have this, that, or the other capabilities, or I can't afford a security system that would have captured all of it. Now, you ask them for a case number or incident report number, and then you use that. Anything that you have any connection with the police, you can always ask the police officer, do you have a business card? I would like a business card, please. Ask them to write the case number or incident number on the card they give you on the reverse side. If they do not have a card, or they say we're out of them, or they don't give them to us, well, I would like you to write out the case number for me on your pad and let me ask you and make sure it's correct. And say, when will this report be ready for my pickup? And they'll say, we have 72 hours to have it ready, or we got to have it ready in 48 hours, or it's available for public pickup as a public record in 5 business days. If you need a police report that somebody else has done and you know the number, you can send a request by mail where you don't have to see nobody and say the case number that you want a copy of, and you can call in advance and find out what the remittance fee is for the putting it out, whether it's $2, $5, $7, and you can send a check or money order with it and say, I've enclosed the fee for the following thing. I've enclosed a self-addressed stuffed envelope, and I'd like this report delivered. Well, like judges and attorneys and bunches of other police have always said, when we knock on a door or a window for any reason, nobody is compelled to come to the door or the window. If we're knocking on the door, or some police banging on the door and saying, I'm giving you an order to come to the door, that doesn't mean anything. They're on your property doing their job or within their job scope, but nothing compels you in the law to go to the door. Some people do go to the door, but they talk through the door and they say, we need to talk to you. I'm not interested. Please leave my property. You know, or they say, we need to inform you of something. Well, I can hear you. Go ahead and tell me what you have to tell me. No, we need you to open the door. Well, I need not to open the door. So our needs have to go aside. We're trying to establish a communication. You're a public trust officer. You have a message. Please deliver it and do your job. Or you can just sit and wait for them to leave. I mean, in other words, I've been there 100 times. Maybe I had a warrant. Maybe I had a death notification. Maybe anything, and I'm knocking on the door. Now, I wasn't a cop that went around peeking in all the windows to see if somebody's in the house, unless it was a serious warrant for rape or murder, home invasion. And then I would go around and try and look in the windows if I could see movement in there, and I had a warrant for the person's arrest. But even then, I'd have to ID that and know personally that is the man or woman for this warrant before I could order them to come to the door, or we're going to kick the door in. That's with a warrant. But elsewise, no dice. You don't have to talk to the police. You don't even have to acknowledge they're there. And usually somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes, they give up and leave. That doesn't mean that one of them isn't going to sit down the street in a perch and wait for you and maybe sit there for a long period of time. But unless you're of some big high value for some reason, they may sit down there 20 or 30 minutes to see if you come out. But even if you come out and you go back in your house, there's nothing they can do if they start back down the road and they say, hey, we need to talk to you, and you walk in the house and lock your door. There ain't nothing they can do to make you come out. They can try and bluff you. You know, you're interfering in operations. We gave you an order. So what? You know, I'm not interfering. I'm exercising my freedom, and I've gone back into my own home. So police a lot of times operate on 75% or more of bluff, you know, or they're going to try and boo you up, as they say in the street. But there's really nothing they can do.
Chief Daymond Jones, thank you for joining us on this episode of the PACTS International reality TV series for TIs. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start off with a question where myself and other TIs, we've experienced perpetrators making anonymous false allegations in phone calls to the police. And this problem of being unable to identify the false accuser due to the anonymity of the phone call system. Is there a way that you see where this issue might be able to be addressed?
That is a very good question. It has some complexity, but I'll do my best. If I'm a police officer and I'm on the street and dispatch calls me and said, we have a report of the following things. I go to your home, your work, or you're on the street, wherever I find you. And then I come up to you and tell you, we've got a report of this. And then at that point in time, then I'm listening to you. So from my point of view, I need to get you to talk all that I can get you to talk. And so while I never did this, there are police that do, that will gaslight you to get you off your game, get you off balance, and run at you psychologically, verbally, and say something and nothing, and careful in what they're saying, and get you to give up whatever they want. And so you need not to talk to me. So my need and your need are competing. If the police say got these reports on you, then you can ask them all the questions you want, and you turn it back around, such as, well, who called you? Well, you know, I'm not at liberty to share that. Well, then I'm not at liberty to discuss this with you. That ends this consensual or non-consensual conversation. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment to remain silent, and I will remain silent. And you cannot arrest me for remaining silent. So please leave me alone. So you've already established what they've called you've invoked, and they cannot use your invoking against you, although they'll try and say, I'm conducting an investigation and you're impeding the investigation. Taking the Fifth Amendment does not impact that, and you cannot criminalize that. So don't try and use that against me. We're not playing word salad. We're not playing mind games. I told you I don't want to talk to you. It's my right. So there you go. However, after this encounter, you can write a letter or a notice of demand to the city that you were interrupted by police on this date and this time on some tip or some phone call or some communication to them by some individual that has now taken up your time, your liberties, and has upset you, and you want to know who this person is that has provided false information. And if they will not give that to you, or they're operating on anonymity to conceal the identity of people giving them false information, which is a criminal charge in itself, then you're going to make this widely known. And you're going to take whatever lawful actions you need to, including suing them. And the purpose for the suit is discovery. So I'm not an attorney, but that is the process. So when you sue the city or the county or state, whomever it may be, then you're saying, I want discovery. That's the purpose for filing, because now you can get a court order that orders them to tell you. And if they say, we don't know, then the discovery is, now, what is your policy and what does the law say about frivolous, anonymous calls on people And do you not have the technology to track it back to a number or an address within your system to find out who it is so that action may be taken? Kind of nip it in the bud, because once you start putting stuff on the record and your record starts building, then it's in your favor and the cards stack in your corner versus theirs. And it ain't the way they're used to doing business, and they don't like it. So it says, this man or woman is going to hold our feet to the fire and make us accountable and responsible. So we probably better leave her alone. And in fact, whether it's city managers, county managers, attorneys, judges, other people that we have to listen to or should listen to, they call us on the phone, an email, a text, come see us face to face more than anything else. And they say, hey, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, unless they are committing a felonious act immediately or an immediate breach of the peace, and no BS and no fabrication, no exaggerating, you can prove it to a jury and a judge, do not have any contact with this man or woman unless they specifically call you. Because this is a liability and a vicarious liability. And they worry about vicarious liability, and they teach that at the police academy more than they teach anything else, liability and vicarious liability. So say I'm the chief of police, and somebody, maybe for whatever reason, don't like us at this particular city or jurisdiction. We've done nothing to them that I'm aware of, but they don't like us. Okay, they don't have to like us, but we are their public servant. Period. That's the law. We work for the people. Okay, so this lady calls me, calls city manager, writes us a letter and says, hey, we had an interaction with this police and we don't want to have any interactions with you. Please leave us alone or cease and desist. Then I'm going to tell all my guys or gals and guys, whatever I got, I'm going to have a meeting or a memo and says, this person says we're depriving them or potentially depriving them of their civil liberties. We're interfering with them. Here is a gigantic liability. This is so beat into their heads, I don't have to say another word. I said, so if you go out and you do something, then I'm in the chain of vicarious liability, because it's going to go from the officer to their supervisor to me, to the city manager, to the mayor, the city council. We all get our name on there. And then you probably don't work here no more, okay? So they get it. But I'm a rare kind of guy from back in the 70s. And we were the Adam 12 and Dragnet police. We actually did have a better sense of humor sometimes, but if it was in the law, it was, and if it wasn't, it wasn't. And we treated people like family members unless they didn't let us. So I told my people, hey, you're asking for trouble. Leave them alone. And then I'm going to find out if an officer interacted with them, what officer, and I'm going to say, me and you are going to have a talk. Why are they complaining on you? Is this a justified complaint or it's an emotional issue? What is it? And I say, and by the way, if you lie to me, you won't be here tomorrow. Okay, I'll accept your resignation right here on the spot if you lie to me. We ain't doing no lying. We can work a lot of things out, but that may mean you got to go kiss this lady's behind, or you got to bow to this man to keep your job if you did something wrong, and hope they allow that. Because if the citizen ain't happy and you're not complying with the law, you don't work here, period. You know, And so I said, so now you have stepped on yourself. And when we're having this meeting, I'm going to let all the officers know what you did and how you got in this jam so they know don't get there. But, you know, the atypical chief of police, the atypical cop in America today, they're just going to say, hey, this is a problem waiting to happen. Leave them alone, period. And they get the message that they're going to have problems in their job or get fired or lose their career because their attorney or legal professional will tell them, leave the man or woman alone, period, in the conversation, unless it's very serious, life-threatening. That's your answer as best as I know.
You've described a number of behaviors, thought processes and behaviors that police will engage in that lack integrity, things such as gaslighting or implying that sugar is a chemical substance. How might these issues of lack of integrity in law enforcement and the thought processes involved be addressed? Are there any organizations that are addressing that matter from within law enforcement? Are there any training programs to help make a shift so that there is more integrity in thought processes and behaviors on the part of law enforcement?
To my knowledge, nothing like that has ever existed, nor does it now exist. It doesn't mean it doesn't, but not to my knowledge. Is it needed? Yes. When did it become really needful? On September the 12th, the day after the terrorist attack, it needed to take effect because the so-called Patriot Act, which is the most unpatriot act, the most un-American act I can imagine, which is so mislabeled, it granted so much, to me, unconstitutional authority to the government and to the enforcement arm of the law under the executive branch being law enforcement, that law enforcement believed they had carte blanche. They had a blank check and they could write anything in there they wanted. And because they historically had a blue wall of silence in many places, other places that doesn't really exist, but it exists in more places than not. I mean, I've been in places where I don't care, every officer to tell you, if you do something wrong, don't count on me lying and covering your behind, okay? Other places, it doesn't matter what happens. We're going to cover each other. So yes, it needs to be, and it's a twofold phase thing in my opinion. One, people that's been in law enforcement say at least 3 to 5 years minimum and longer, it's going to be hard to change them. Old habits die hard, even when they're bad and wrong. But if you started today, it will take 10 to 20 years to really evolve. The first thing is training. You've got to get your legislators to make legislative orders that there must be the Law Enforcement Education Accountability Act, or name it like such. I know everything that needs to be in there. I've offered it to people numerous times. I've offered to go to agencies, departments, and teach this, that you attract more flies with honey than vinegar. Okay, the police can be bold and strong and do what they got to do when push comes to shove. But the other 97% of the time, they need to be a little more laid back, a little more approachable, and go back to the 70s style of actually doing your job, not enforcing your feelings as though your feelings were law. And if somebody upsets you, then you're abusing your office by doing wrong. You just have to suck it up, buttercup, and be the man or woman behind that badge and be professional And if somebody tells you you're a piece of crap, you say, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Hold your profession. They say you're a pig. I mean, I've had it. You know, back in the 70s, that was a big thing. You're a pig. I smell bacon burning. Da da da. I say, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. And go on. If that happened today, you're probably going to go to a man made cage and you're probably going to catch multiple charges. That's abuse of office. That's abuse of your badge. But it happens routinely today. So you have to do the education, one. Number two, most of the instructors at the academies are current or retired law enforcement who tell a lot of their war stories. That includes what they got away with, not what was legal, not what's right, but what they got away with. So when they get away with something, they're telling you, hey, it's okay to do this, and I got away with it, and you probably can too. And this is how it unfolded. So they're telling their war stories along with the curriculum. Now, some will say, well, back in my day, we could do this. Now you can't. But either way, it's still opening the imagination to how to do things. And so some people have an agenda. They become a cop to fulfill their agenda. Other people like me were just naturally cops that had to go to the academy because the law required it. I was a good people person. I love people, want to help them. If I can't help you, I sure won't harass you. I'll turn my badge in. So you got to do the education, and then you got to change the trainers. That's the answer.
All right. So my third and final question for you this evening is, I'm wondering about training opportunities. The criminal enterprise operations taking place, one TI after another is reporting that targeting is becoming worse and worse. The longer the criminals have the opportunity to develop their techniques and develop their operations without justice, then this is building upon itself, especially when you have composites of technology. For instance, AI combined with neurotechnology, combined with advanced communication systems, et cetera. We have criminology departments that are just now starting to look at things like AI crime. That's not looking at the composites of these technologies. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on the continuing education and expansion of these awareness building issues with regard to these high-tech crimes taking place? Any particular college initiatives, university initiatives, continuing education initiatives, and how might we be able to advocate that training and awareness in these issues get expanded?
There is awareness that is needed. There's a lot of ways about going to it, and all the dynamics and platforms and opportunities are about as much as you can imagine. Keep in mind that government in general is 10 to 20 years behind the time. So say in the year 2000, when they come out with Windows ME, okay, and people began these more serious chat boards, other things that was gathering a lot of data and intel, way more than people realize. It's only in the last 3 to 7 years has there been serious talk, serious changes in law on what can and cannot be obtained and opting out. So this was needed 24 years ago, and it is just now coming about. So again, around 20 years before there's any serious movement. AI has just really come on the scene in a big way the last 2 years. So you're probably looking at 2040 before there'll be any serious law to address these issues. Right now, and I'm not a techno type of person on these, okay? But I'm as smart as the people around me. And I got lots and lots of people around me. If I wanted to know everything you're doing 24 hours a day, I can make a phone call and call somebody and I can collect it. It'll take me about 15 minutes. I call and say, I want to know what this man or woman's doing. They will provide me cajillions, if there's such a word, of data points and information on you, and that information fed into the system, especially quantum systems, can tell me if you're likely to drink a diet drink or not, and if so, what brand. Are you likely to smoke, do drugs? I can find out tremendous amount of things to where I basically know 90% of who you are just by that alone. I can, through facial recognition, I can know pretty much where all you've been and can see audios and videos on you in these places. Know what kind of car you drive. If you go to school, where do you go to school? So I can exploit all of that if I'm a bad guy, and I can figure out, hey, she's got 250 grand, and I'm gonna make her money my money. So I figure out how to exploit it to strip you of your assets. So now you're penniless and homeless. So that is very, very serious.
Hi, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know, when my targeting started, one of the sheriff's deputies told my family that I was hallucinating. And of course, everything flowed from that. And I'm wondering, is there any recourse for me to correct that? Or is that always going to be there in my record?
Well, law enforcement cannot, is prohibited and forbidden from, quote, diagnosing people because they are not licensed physicians. So they use very carefully crafted word salad or word magic when talking to people. For example, maybe you've really, really upset me and I'm a bad cop, and you're saying things that don't seem just right. Then the easiest thing for me to do if I'm a bad cop is to those around you, then I say, this poor lady, she's an awesome lady, but she has some sort of appearing to be, seemingly, see, not diagnosis, appearing and seemingly to be, based on my training experience, to be having hallucinations, fantasy and make-believe. It appears there may be some break between reality and fantasy, and she can't help it. It's just who she is. But you'll have to keep a close eye on her and so forth. And then in my incident report, I say she portrayed and projected the following image projections through her traits and through her mannerisms by making such statements as, I saw, and I put it in quotes, and if I got a video, I can go back and listen to the exact words. Now, your tone of voice and gait and speech on the video ain't what's on the paper, because all there are words. But I saw this man go behind the tree and he didn't come out the other side. And when I walked around there, he wasn't behind the tree. Where did he go? So, in other words, I use your words against you, and I say that you're saying things that are fantastical and unachievable. Or I can write on there, maybe I'm halfway decent, and I put on there, you made statements and did things that caused me to believe you may have some emotional issue. You know, so that's lesser, and that her network of family and friends is helping her work through this. But if you want to, and this is a hard leap due to qualified immunity, and they said we were just doing our best and good faith, you got to prove that they knowingly and intentionally, knowing that all of this is false, used their badge and their position to influence your family and friends to treat you differently, so they acted in deprivation of your rights and violated your civil rights. They acted unprofessional, but being rude or unprofessional isn't a crime.
Okay, I actually have one more question for you, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we just started a TI group in Nebraska, and I met with a lady that was joining our group for the first time, and we met for coffee. And I'm used to, you know, kind of the low level people following me around town and coming into stores when I'm in stores and that sort of thing. But yesterday we had an undercover cop that was in there, and that was unusual. He had a badge, but it was on his waist and it was hidden by his shirt. I wouldn't have even known it was there, but he reached up for something and I saw it. So can you give me any idea why on earth he would be bothering with somebody like me?
Well, do you know for sure it was a law enforcement badge versus a firefighter, private investigator, security officer, personal protection officer? Because a whole pile of people have all kind of badges, and it's in the style of law enforcement, but it's for 100 different things. And people across, I mean, there's at least 2 million open carry or right to carry people that wear a badge that says that on it. So they cause people to think they're cops and they're not. Now, if it really was a cop, what was the interaction with you?
None. He just stayed there the
Okay.
whole time we were there, which was about 3 hours.
Well, you know, you can get into mere coincidence.
Yeah.
You can be, he could have been there because there was allegations of some criminal activity at that location, and he was there for 4 or 5 hours, or he had just got there before you did, and he had waited there all that time to observe things and report back intel to his agency or to the fusion center for whatever, and you happen to be in there. But, you know, I can't say. That's all speculative.
Yeah. Yeah. He did come in after me. Yeah. And he was alone, you know, he sat alone for 3 hours in there. So yeah, it was just odd. The badge was, the background was black and the front of it was silver, and it was kind of like a shield. It had a point at the bottom and then it was across the top.
Yes. Was he using his phone or laptop, or what was he doing?
Phone. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, you know, there's probably as many chances that he was doing things online and getting refills on coffee or beverages and busy at it. And then there's as many chances that he was there to see what you're doing, because maybe you or the other individuals on a watch list, and it's a public place. So it doesn't seem out of order for him to be there to just generally observe you. And they got these tiny things like this that can be faced towards you, and it's a electronic amplified human voice related thing, so he can record everything you're saying, and that's completely legal because it's a public place.
Okay. Okay.
So I can't give you a definitive answer. I don't know.
That was great. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Chief Jones, you actually mentioned you mentioned the FCC at the beginning of the meeting. I wanted to ask you: have you ever solved a case of electromagnetic harassment or extreme targeting by contacting the FCC?
I've never specifically had a need for it. I have been contacted by citizens in the past about their TVs or radios having a lot of bleed over and other problems. And then occasionally they'd say, and I get really bad headaches, or whatever it is, it's strong enough it's wiping out the TV, or it's so snowy or digital it's decompressing all the time, and I'm feeling sick, something's wrong. And I said, well, I can try and do this or that, whatever they wanted to do. But a few times over the years, somebody contacted the FCC. I didn't know it. And then the FCC shows up and they ask me, these are federal investigators, do you know Mr. or Miss So-and-so? Yes. Usually the answer is yes. What kind of people are they? In other words, are they trustworthy? Are they solid? Yes. Okay, well, we're investigating frequency interferences in violation of FCC Part Rule 15 or Part 22B or whatever. Okay, and would you mind going with us and introducing them to us to them? So, and we might need your assistance here locally. No problem. And they've usually tracked it down to a ham radio that was, 50,000 watts that's going around the world about 6 times a second. And they would find them and order them to close down, or a court order to remove their antenna or other things. Occasionally, there would be a television station, a radio station, or a cell tower that they would find out was misaligned or something like that. And at that point, they would find them and do tests and order them to correct this immediately. And sometimes they'd put them out of service until corrected.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that answer. Can a civilian circumvent calling up the local police department and just contact the FCC directly?
Oh, of course. I have clients that have, not a pile, but probably a dozen that have asked me to help consult and to guide them on how to contact them and what to say and not to say, and when they show up, what to do or not do to appear a legitimate complaint, which it is, but appear to be very reasonable, very sensible people, so that they will do the maximum best job for you.
Great, and that's a branch of the government that I haven't. I don't even know. Who to contact anyway about this. And I had another question. How soon do you see law enforcement or the government publicly addressing the issue of targeting? Because what I'm experiencing the most is electronic harassment and directed energy attacks. I know that in the news, um, it's been a developing news story that is covered, you know, more so now than ever. And just, people have been made aware of directed energy attacks. How soon do you see the government publicly addressing the issue of targeting by electronic harassment or directed energy attacks through like news broadcasts, news articles, briefings, and maybe rolling out a statewide or national course of action, um, along with legislation?
Uh, if the dynamics change, everything changed. But currently, on the wheel of progress, 20 or so years.
20 years?
Yes.
Goodness.
Now, that is dynamic. That could change in 5 years if you change the dynamic. Okay. In other words, let's just pretend for a minute the Chuck Schumer, the vice president of the Senate, were to be attacked, and there was no way for them to get around it, and it had to come through certain channels, then you would see some rapid movement on the front if it become public. If they could keep a lid on it, they would handle it in-house, and they got the tools and the people to do that. But if it become a public event, it would change dynamics swiftly. Say a Brad Pitt or a Taylor Swift had something and it become public, then it would go across all the platforms and people would be saying, change, 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 and you could get something in 5 years. It could be as fast as 2 years, but within 5.
So there are people who do surveillance and they are intentionally misreporting what they're surveilling. We have issues with false intel being generated, especially against people who are being targeted wrongfully. Is there any recourse for people experiencing this to go forward and go through clarification processes, vindication processes through addressing the intel on the individual?
Again, we get back to dynamics, but most surveillance by the government is either classified or it is sensitive, specific release. And so you don't know exactly what is being reported. You don't know who's reporting, and you don't know how you're affected by it. So in legal matters, you have to have what the court calls standing. You have to be injured. You have to have a right to remedy and recovery. So when you can't get at the information, you can't prove it to address it. So that's real hard. But now, for example, if police got a warrant or a mental order to come put you in the mental ward, or mostly with the crazy house, or you're put in jail, then you've been damaged, and then you sue and get discovery, and you get a court order to find out who provided this intel on you, and you have a right to confront them and to bring challenges to them and bring your information to the table and prove them wrong.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us tonight on this episode. We appreciate your time and your attention to these matters, and I hope it might invite some further discussions in the future.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. God bless you all and your family.
Thank you. God bless you as well.
Hi, I'm Jill, wishing all of the TIs a very happy Thanksgiving.
I'm Catherine, and may the grace of God bless you on this Thanksgiving.
Hi, this is Jarrell. I want to wish the targeted community and just everyone happy Thanksgiving out there. Remember the reason for the season, whether you're targeted or not. And just remember that it's all about family and seeing people that you may not have seen throughout the year. Your loved ones. Everyone wants to see a smile on your face. So again, I'd like to wish you guys a happy Turkey Day. Stay blessed out there.